You are now listening to TOL Podcast, Thinking Out Loud with your host, Jay Lip.
Thinking Out Loud Podcast, TOLpodcast.com. It's your boy Jay Lip. You know what this is and you know who I am. We back in the building yet again, another week, another episode for y'all. And I got the big homie, the big bro, Mike in the building. Mike Billingsley, what's good, baby?
Man, not much. I'm chilling. How are you, man?
Man, I'm blessed and highly favored, as my wife would say. Quite honestly, man, we appreciate you being on this episode and representing Charlie X Wood, or as we would say out loud, Charlie Wood, with the apparel, with the glasses, with the hot frames, the bags, all that you need. Let them know where they can find you at.
Man, you can find all my stuff at www.charliexwood.com, charliexwood.com.
All right. I want to make sure we most definitely get that out first because, first and foremost, I love to show love to the people who show love to me. So
I appreciate it.
Oh, no doubt, bro. So we grown, we build, and this week it was my first opportunity to be a guest for the first time on someone else's podcast, the big homie Mike. So, I appreciate that yet again, bro. I thank you for that opportunity. And
it was a good time.
On your podcast, we talked a little bit more about specific conversations resulting within your niche market of entrepreneurship. This is thinking out loud, bro. We ain't talking about that shit on here.
I heard some of the episodes. It's real talk. I got it.
Yeah, we going in, baby. Let's dive straight into it. What's going on this week as far as what a lot of people are concerned or confused or really not knowing what the impact is this whole net neutrality getting basically debunked, basically rejected from the current standard that was in place as far as the freedoms that us as consumers had over getting all of our internet access the way that we wanted to. You pay your bill and you can get to any site or any type of content you wanted. Net neutrality, break it down in layman's terms for the people who don't know.
So right now, net neutrality in theory is allowing everyone to operate on the same playing field. So it doesn't matter if you're rich or if you're poor, you can build a website and you can compete against large corporations as if you were that large corporation. And a lot of people are worried about the fact that they're trying to take away that neutrality because if we can't compete with a large corporation, small businesses or, small communities that have no voice in large media outlets will no longer have a voice at all. So if you look at all the crazy innovation that we've had over the last 10 to 20 years, Google being more prevalent and the fact that e-commerce is prevalent and the fact that you can see all of these crazy injustices happening in the black community with police shootings and so on and so forth, the likelihood of that being out and available to the masses is much lower because you'll now have gatekeepers in place, and there's only about 3 in place that can control the type of information that flows to the consumer at the very end. The way I fit, go for it.
No, I was just going to ask you, so does that sound like censorship? Because that's what it sounds like to me.
Right. So that's what the FCC does, right? The FCC censors everybody, right? So the problem with net neutrality is, I don't want to get deep into the conspiracy type of thing, is that either way, the way that it's operating now isn't exactly great. So what's going on, they're saying it's kind of like a red pill, blue pill situation right now. It's like either we leave everything the way that it is now, and we allow Facebook and Google, who are kind of the gatekeepers right now to the internet, believe it or not, they own the cloud pretty much. You allow them to continue to be the gatekeepers, or we change the reins over to the hands of, AT&T, Comcast, and Verizon. And those are the people that kind of like pipes the internet to your house. If you have Google Fiber, Google can pipe the internet straight from Google into your house, but AT&T, Comcast, and Verizon are usually kind of like the pipelines for every other provider to reach the consumer.
Okay, so in a way we could say that maybe the access to information is going to be stifled and siphoned off by whoever the highest bidder is, correct?
Yeah, that's the huge fear right now, and that's a distinct possibility. When you see, here's the problem. So you got big juggernauts battling over who's going to make money. So at the end of the day, everything comes down to money. When you have these multi-billion-dollar corporations like Amazon and Google and Facebook making tons of money primarily off of advertising, AT&T and Comcast and so on and forth, they feel like they're not getting a fair share of that pie. So if AT&T, Comcast, and Verizon are allowed to get rid of net neutrality, they can actually charge Google, Facebook, so on and so forth, premiums in order for them to use the internet at the same level as everyone else.
And when you say level, you mean like speed of bandwidth and basically access, right?
Yeah, the speed, the bandwidth, and how easily it is for you to connect to information via the internet. So, in reality, there's other things besides Google. Like you don't have to use Google. When I don't know if everyone remembers when we were kids, they had like Ask Jeeves,
Oh yeah,
Google, and
yeah.
a few others, right? So when it was first starting up, if you couldn't find what you wanted on Ask Jeeves, you went to another site and then you would go to Google. The thing is, Google became the primary provider for the search engine because the way that Google search was, it kind of worked better with the way that we as human beings were trying to find information. And because of that, we all started to crowd and go towards Google. And that allowed Google to become this big, gigantic tech giant that now controls pretty much all of the internet. So if you use your computer, the likelihood of Google gathering your data is pretty high.
Am I safe in assuming the fact that if companies have to pay more for
hmm
access and for bandwidth priority, they're going to
hmm
roll down that cost to the consumer, correct? Almost like
Typically,
in a way, like I try to, the analogy would be like a cable provider. You have your basic programming, you have a
yep,
tier 1, tier 2,
yep,
tier 3. Tier 3 may get you everything that you want and everything you're used to having at the same
hmm
speed, but you got to pay a premium for that. So if you just want tier 1, you may get the basic, which is in essence for TV, basic cable. You don't get the same access to the same resources that you used to have prior to the extermination of net neutrality. And by definition, neutrality, meaning being neutral, means everyone has access to everything as
yep.
fast as they can pay for their internet. But I anticipate, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that we're going to get into a tiered system of internet providers where they say, well, we provide you a quick access to what? Netflix, Hulu,
hmm
and your video
hmm
streaming sites, basic. Then secondary would be, if you want access to, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, social media at a higher speed, that's tier 2. And then tier 3 would be, let's be honest, nefarious websites, adult entertainment things that, people may be willing to pay for, but it's still costing them more as a company to pay for that bandwidth and that speed to get the consumer what they need. So am I correct in assessing that the tiered the tiered program of cable could translate itself to the tiered programming of the internet?
Yeah, that's what they're saying right now. So theoretically, that's exactly what happened. So you'd have to, if you have AT&T, they would give you whatever package deal for Google, Facebook, and so on and so forth. And the reason behind that is because most people right now, when you use the internet, you're using it to look at Facebook and Netflix and pretty much the same thing, except the people that are piping the internet to us, they aren't really getting a slice of the pie of the finances from that, and they're kind of jealous about it. But with the whole term of neutrality, we're living in the age of spin right now, where the way that things are phrased makes it seem like it's good for the consumer, and it might not necessarily be good for the consumer. Going away from net neutrality, it might yield more competition amongst the people who provide the internet. It may not. Right now, the way that it is, you don't really have a huge chance of beating Google if you want to all of a sudden create another search engine. For example, there's a search engine that's available that no one knows and no one uses, but every time you search on there, the money is used to plant a tree. But no one's going to go from using Google to this other one. I can't even remember the name of it. So it's not neutral in the sense of everyone being on the same level playing field anymore, because you have these big, gigantic companies that have leveraged it to the point where they are the gatekeepers and they're in control of everything. So going past the whole just paying for your different services, that's a small issue. That's a really small issue that a lot of people are trying to focus on. Like, will they make me pay extra for Netflix?
No, see, I disagree with that because I feel like it's not a small issue if it comes down to the consumer level, which is you,
hmm
I, and everyone else. That's what we're most concerned about. What is the impact of this decision going to make on my everyday life?
Yeah, and that hasn't really been outlined clearly.
Right, but if it's not outlined and they approve a bill, that means the shit's going to hit you. And it's going to be
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, well, this is what it is now.
Yeah, so we're in the situation where you feel like the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know, and
Absolutely,
we
absolutely.
need to understand what's going on because I think August 20th or something of next year, that's the deadline. Either net neutrality stays or it's gone. So right now, a lot of people are using this fear-based thing to kind of hypnotize the masses into thinking they got to be on one side or another. When in reality, the internet needs to kind of, we need to revise how it's played either way. No one should have this much control over anyone, whether it's the way that it is now, where you have Facebook and Google gathering every single scrap of data and then selling it to, all of the retailers around the world, or if it goes the other way, where you have AT&T, Comcast, and Verizon taking every single scrap of data and profiting off of that, or shutting down your website if you say something that the government possibly doesn't agree with, which already happens. So, for example, with Silk Road, everybody knows about Silk Road.
No,
That's where you
no,
go.
no, they don't. Explain that.
Oh, okay. All right. So Silk Road was a site that got shut down some years ago. Basically, on Silk Road, you could get access to any type of drug that you wanted. And the theory around Silk Road is that it made the streets safer because you're no longer having this back alley transactions where if you want to buy weed, you got to meet somebody behind the Walmart on blah, 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 blah at this time or the other. Instead, it was more like an Amazon transaction where you go on the Silk Road, you find somebody who's got it, then they deliver it to your house or something like that, right? So the theory is,
You blowing my mind right now. Silk Road was an actual Amazon for drugs.
yeah, you didn't know about Silk Road?
No, sir. No, sir.
Oh, shoot. Well, it's too late. I'm sorry.
Man, I ain't asking if it was too late. I'm not trying to go. I'm just saying I never heard of it. But go ahead.
Right. So with Silk Road, since they were doing that illegal activity, even though, the argument was that they made drug dealing safer, which is kind of weird to say, but since it was an illegal activity, the government can work with AT&T, Verizon, Comcast, so on and so forth, to find who created it using their ISP and then shut that site down so it can no longer exist. So that's something that already happens. If the gatekeepers of the internet changes hands, you can still have your ISP shut down. It's not going to change. It's just like Kim Jong-un in North Korea. They can cut it off and on whenever they want. It's just more so about who's going to profit off of it.
So it sounds like, from your perspective, and this is just me reading your energy, but it sounds like you're more concerned about access to information versus the actual cost to the consumer. Because a lot of the folks that I done talked to, all they care about is how much more is it going to cost me to still do what I do every day daily. And so with
Yeah.
you kind of sounded like it's bigger than just cost. It's more
Yes.
so about censorship, less action, or less resource. I guess you would say less of a ability to access
Govern
resources.
oneself, really. Yeah. So
Exactly.
you can't make your own decision. You can't have access to the internet freely either way. But people think about, okay, is this going to cost me extra money to look
Oh
at
yeah, that's
Netflix?
all they're talking about. Yeah,
Is my Pornhub still going to be working? Who
exactly.
cares?
Yeah.
Who cares about that, really? You
A
want to
lot
know
of
that,
people care about that. What are you
which
talking about, bro?
which is the small part. But if you think about like the people who have no voice, like in Uniontown, Alabama, that they're getting pollution dumped into their city that was moved from Tennessee down to Uniontown, that's something that matters about the internet.
But see,
That's something that affects the community. That's something that people in this disparate area, they don't have a voice, and the only way they have a voice is through the internet.
but I
It's not
feel like
about the cost of it.
But I feel like what you're doing is you're isolating one single portion of the fight, one single portion of the battle. It's almost like, when someone says, we lost the battle, but we'll win the war. The
Yeah,
war, holistically, is the fact that net neutrality may be extinct, and we may go back
yeah.
into a place where, not even go back to, but we may introduce a environment for the internet where it is censored and it is controlled, and what you want to access you can't. But let's
Which
not
already
be
exists.
but let's not be disingenuous and act like most niggas or most people in general are not thinking about the fact of how does this affect me daily. And that's what I'm representing for those folks is,
All right.
if the dollar is going to change on what I need to do. I know a friend of mine, my boy C Smith, shout out to C Smith. He done already told me, he said if he got to pay extra for the internet just to access the same things that he's been accessing, he ain't paying shit else. So
Right.
he willing to
That's
throw that away. And I'm thinking
that's
about
a
it
good
from
point.
And I'm thinking about it from a perspective of someone who owns a website. I think about
Yeah.
myself or even my wife who has her own business with her own website. Shout out TLYarncrafts.com, my baby Tony, love you girl. Anyway, moving forward, I'm thinking about the fact that I don't want her to have to pay extra fees for her site to be featured because now you have to pay a premium so that you can be featured online. Like, that's the thing that a
Right.
lot of us have to think about, both consumer and creator. So from a creator or creative perspective, is there any concern that you have, being that you're running an apparel
Yeah.
business and a
Yeah.
podcast? What are your
Yeah.
concerns about the net neutrality impact to you?
Right. So directly to me, the platform that I use is Shopify. So if net neutrality kind of went into place, that could mean Shopify would increase the cost of me using it. Right. So
And
it
ironically, my
will go
wife
up.
uses that as well.
Right. So it'll go up for me. And, the idea is that if it goes up for me, the cost of my items will go up slightly to make up for that cost. Okay. That's what everybody's worried about. Right. But the other thing is, like, for example, who's your provider for your phone right now? Is it Verizon? Is it AT&T?
It's
Most likely that's what
Sprint
it
for
is,
us.
right?
Sprint for
Right.
us.
Right. So Sprint is like a kind of a teamwork between AT&T and Verizon. Sprint's not really Sprint. But
Whoa,
so
what
if
you mean? Don't do
they
that.
work together.
Don't disrespect the God Sprint.
Yeah,
Don't
I
do that.
mean, you can have Boost Mobile, you got Cricket, it's still
Oh,
AT&T, it's still Verizon. It's the same network.
all right. Go
It's
ahead
just
with your
it's a
little.
different name.
Go ahead.
So if we're saying, okay, the internet will now be controlled by AT&T and Verizon. AT&T and Verizon are going to now charge Google and Facebook premiums in order to get the speeds, in order to reach the masses like they used to, so that Verizon and AT&T recoup their money. Do you think Verizon and AT&T will not continue to compete on the same level for the cell phone providers, in which they would lower the cost of your phone bill?
Hell
So
no, they're gonna compete.
right, they're going to continue to compete. So even if technically you might increase your bill on the internet side, does that decrease your bill on the phone provider
Oh
side?
no, they all going up. In my opinion, everything is going up because at the end of the day, when do you check your Facebook more often? On your computer or on your phone? And
78% of people use the phone. Yeah.
exactly. Nice statistic. I appreciate you. You learning, motherfucker. I appreciate you. I appreciate you bringing them statistics to the conversation. So, with that being said, it's going to go up on both accounts. But the point of the conversation is the impact to us as the consumer. And it's not even really a black, people of color versus white or anything like that. It's just us as American consumers. The American government has decided that net neutrality is something that needs to be eradicated. They voted on it. It's a done deal, and now we just need to figure out what the impact is to us. And it sounds like we've addressed that thoroughly, where it's just going to be a situation where you're going to have to make a choice and say,
Yeah.
is this worth the extra money or the extra cost of information? And to me, it's a terrible situation in a free world, in a free market economy that we try to claim that the United States of America represents with capitalism and everything else. It goes against that grain, and that's the part that I struggle with, because it's now getting back to a place where you have propaganda, where you can have quote unquote fake news paying for coverage, and you can
Yeah.
have real news basically being submerged in the ether that is the underworld of the websites because they don't pay to play. It's like payola back in the days where the radio stations used to get paid to play certain artists' music, which in my opinion they still get. But with that being said, I still feel like it's a negative impact, and I feel like it's something that we should be against. However, those days and those times for us to voice that opinion are done, and our opinions were not taken into consideration.
Oh, it's not done yet. We still got time to voice our opinion. You need to call your state rep, contact your state rep, and tell them how you feel, because it doesn't actually get passed, or it doesn't take effect until August. I can't remember the exact date.
But what does that do? Do you believe in that system? Do you believe you can really call?
Do I believe in democracy?
No, do you believe that you can call your state legislator and say, you know what, I don't agree with this. I really wish you would vote on X versus Y. Like, does that work?
Oh, man, it depends on how active you want to be in anything. I think in this day and age, everybody is more active in the political realm than ever. So if it doesn't work and whoever your rep is does not go with the popular consensus of your entire city, state, or county, then they no longer will have a job during the next election. And if they have no job during the next election, that gives someone else an opportunity to come in and overturn whatever happened prior. So
Yeah, but how
2 years
long does
ago,
that take though? How long does that take?
oh man, the election cycles change. I would tell everybody to download. I think the app is called Countable. Let me check this out. Yeah, it's Countable. Download the Countable app so you can just be aware of everything that's going on in politics. Because there's a lot of stuff that's affecting us on a daily basis besides net neutrality. But for example, with net neutrality, Barack put that in place in 2015, and that was being overturned already 2 years later. So it can change that quickly. So even if they pass it in August of 2018, by the time 2020 comes back into play, you can get it changed
Mm,
back.
okay, great point. Great point. So the changing of the guard can also change the rules of engagement.
Exactly.
All right, appreciate that feedback. And what's that site one again? One more time for the app people who out there
Oh, it's
listening.
an app. It's called Countable. Countable. Countable.
Okay, and for countable, you can go in and be counted. Is that what the inference is? You can be counted as far as what your thoughts are. Or what is that about?
Yeah, so you can get in direct contact with whoever your state reps are, and you can be aware of who your state reps are. But it's kind of like a Twitter feed or a Facebook feed that's strictly about politics. So you can see what they feel about marijuana legalization. You can see how they feel about the state of police brutality. You can see how how these things are being swung and who's voting for what and how it's going to affect you on a daily basis. You can see every single bill, like the smallest bill that you would not even think of because it doesn't get a lot of press, but you can see all of that. And you get notifications when there's anything that's close to your heart. So if you really, really, really care about net neutrality, you hit up a notification, and every time anybody has any type of decision on the political realm, you're notified of it. And you can say, oh, shit, they messing up. I need to contact my state rep and let them know that I disagree. And in all honesty, the more annoying you are, the more pushy you are,
We'll say the more consistent.
yeah, that's the higher likelihood of you getting what you want. And that's what politics are. It's about you going for what you want because you represent everyone else. Like everyone's not going to have time or access to their state rep to say, hey, net neutrality is some bull and this is going to ruin my business. Everyone doesn't have the time to do it
Right.
because you might be working all day to grow your
And
business.
to make sure people know, because this is thinking out loud, he meant to say this is some bullshit. That's what he meant to say.
Yeah, it's bullshit. I know that's
Right.
what it
So,
is. But sitting back and just complaining and looking at Facebook and saying, "Oh, I disagree with net neutrality," doesn't mean anything. But if you go straight to your state rep and say, "Look, I disagree with net neutrality," I don't need 50 likes. I need your like. I need you to say that, "Hey, all right, you and all these other people out in my hallway are making my life a living hell. If I say net neutrality stays the way it is, will you leave me alone? Yes. Well, that's what it's going to be."
damn it, brother, you made a great ass point, and I would hate to, or would be remiss if I didn't translate your same point about how we feel and the things that we think about into the final topic for this evening and this episode, which is kind of a merger of two big things. There, in my opinion, has been a wave coming through when it comes to addressing allegations of people, specifically men in this instance,
Hmm.
in positions of power. And
Hmm.
I'm not gonna use Hollywood as the exclusive source, but we will just say men in
It's
power.
Hollywood.
It is, but there's also some instances that occur outside of Hollywood that don't get the same type of recognition because they don't
Okay.
have the same hot topics and the hot takes. But
Okay.
with that being said, I want to ask you to kind of close this out. It's something that's real and it's something that's pertinent. Now, they've taken away our ability to get access to information. Donald Trump,
Yeah.
President Trump, has
Yeah.
also been making claims against, media that comes out against him is false or is fake news, and it basically goes under the carpet or under the radar, and it gets dismissed so quickly that there's no opportunity to challenge it. However, in retrospect, you are seeing a series of individuals making allegations against said people in Hollywood, as you said, or in media, which I would prefer to say. And
Hmm.
these allegations are costing people their credibility, their
Hmm.
respectability, their dignity, and their
Hmm.
ability to survive and to be fruitful in
Yeah.
their economic trajectory. How do we, as a people, I guess, really put yourself in a position of, I guess I would say, like a Tavis Smiley, a Russell
Hmm.
Simmons? How do you put yourself in position of those individuals and prove innocence when someone claims or makes a claim against you that you know for a fact in your heart of hearts is not true. How do you prove that you're innocent when you're already judged guilty by the court of public opinion?
Right. So the court of public opinion, it holds a lot of weight, even though you probably won't go to jail. You won't get any money anymore, right?
So the court of public opinion matters when it comes to the individual, but not when it comes to net neutrality, when the majority of the states that have been polled have said they are against the eradication of net neutrality. So we have on one hand, net neutrality gets eradicated even when people are saying overwhelmingly, no, we want to keep net neutrality. However, when it comes to one individual being claimed to have had some type of sexual misconduct, we take away everything from their legacy to their earnings. Like, how do you justify the allegations against these individuals and how they can prove themselves innocent or guilty?
Yeah, so net neutrality affects the masses while this affects an individual person. So if Travis Smiley,
Tavis, you got to give him respect. Tavis.
I mean Travis Smiley, I keep saying Travis.
Come
Tavis
on, man.
Smiley,
We're about to take your black card if you don't know Tavis Smiley.
If he really was just banging all of the people that was working for him, which I'm trying to keep up with the story, but he keeps going back and forth saying, how else do you meet people? And, I had sexual relations with this person, but no with that person. But overall, he's doing the right thing. He's defending himself. So everyone has an opinion about him already. So you're going to have to either be on his side or you're going to have to think about the people who he possibly victimized.
Okay, so here's my question. If you have to make a choice, though, who do you align with? The accusers or the victims of the allegations?
Yeah, so for me personally, I think anyone who possibly has been abused, you need to really, really, really look into it to make sure that, that victim doesn't become, the prey again. So
let's take a step back, though. You said the abused. Again, it's allegations. We have no proof that this person or said persons were the persons who are abused. We have individuals coming out and saying, Tavis Smiley did X, Y, and Z with me while I was reporting to him. You also have Russell Simmons, who had situations where not only did he own it and say, you know what, we was together, but, it was consensual. Like, he even went as far as take a lie detector test. And people are coming out and saying, well, you know what, lie detector tests aren't 100%, so we can't trust that. So a conversation I had with my wife, I apologize, babe, I got to share this with the people, thinking out loud, you already know what it is, but in that conversation with my wife, she aligned herself with the victims no matter what. And I said, well, how can a man ever prove that he is innocent of these said claims if it happened 5, 10, 15, 20, or even 40 years ago? How can you ever negate their claims with no type of statutory evidence?
Well, there's no statute of limitation on rape, right?
But we're not talking about rape because it's rape
or allegations
somebody, sexual misconduct.
Yeah,
that's the problem to me, is that there's too big of an umbrella. I do not equate a person who made an inappropriate comment, even Trump, as much as I hate to say it, talking about grabbing women by their hind parts, grabbing them by their front parts, whatever. I mean, grabbing them by the pussy. That's what he said. Right. But with that being said, there's no evidence of that having happened. So if people come out and they say, and it was I think 16 people, it was either 6 or 16 people, women who came and said, yeah, he did that to me, blah, blah, blah. And I'm saying, okay, you know what? Let's investigate that. All I'm asking for is a thorough investigation. But what constitutes a thorough investigation when you've already been deemed guilty by the court of public opinion?
Well, again, if you had some type of allegedly had any type of sexual abuse that may have happened to you, it's difficult to be the first person to come forward and say, hey, this happened to me. So if you don't have that first person doing it, which would encourage the other possible victims to stand up as well, then, a possible predator could go loose. And whether it's Russell Simmons or, for example, Michigan State just sent us a long newsletter about a doctor on campus that's been abusing people for several years, and
Yes,
now
they
they're
did. Yes, they
right.
did.
So now they're paying like $10 million to support the victims of that abuse. The thing is, there's always got to be a thorough investigation. Right now, he and Russell Simmons, they're public figures, and that's how they make their money, being public figures. The problem is, as a public figure, you should not put yourself in this type of situation ever. And the other problem is that it wasn't something that people stood up for and came out about previously. So right now,
Hold on. I wanted to let you get both of your points out before I challenge you on the first one, which is because they're public figures, they shouldn't put themselves in that situation.
No,
Now you're blaming the people who have the allegations against them for being in position of power. And when I say
yeah,
power, I mean just strictly a person who is a host of a TV show, a host of a PBS show, a host of a podcast or a
hmm
radio show. Like
yep,
you really kind of jumped out the window with the first statement by saying that, we looking at those people and saying you shouldn't put yourself in those positions, but what position are they putting themselves in, or what situation are you in if you go into a company party or you go into an industry event and
right,
someone says, quote unquote, after the fact that something negative or some type of sexual misconduct occurred, if there's no evidence, the judicial system in America is based on innocent until proven guilty. However,
yeah,
we have gotten so far away from that. And what I put on Facebook recently is what I see right now is very, very similar to the Salem witch trials, which was somebody can make a claim and your ass is dead.
yeah. So when you're like in the public eye at an office party, and everyone can see you do something, that's different versus for example, Russell Simmons and Roy, I think his name was Moore or something like that, where they brought the young lady back to their room, and now you have he say, she say. No one can verify. So we can't just all say, okay, she went back to the room with Russell, therefore she wanted it. You can't do that. Even if
Why? Why?
Russell was halfway inside of her and she said, "Stop, get off me, I don't want to anymore." He has to stop, get off her, and it
Wait.
is what it is.
Why was she in his apartment or his hotel room?
Because they were all together. I don't know the details of it, but
See, this is where I get foggy.
okay,
Why? So you talked about, and I hate to flip it on you, but you said for these celebrity gentlemen, don't put themselves in situations where
don't
they can be at risk. But
don't
didn't some of these women put themselves in situations where they can be at risk? Because in Russell Simmons' situation, one of the claims is that he asked the girl, said, "Hey, you want to go back to the crib?" And she was like,
right,
"No." But then she said she got with him in the car, and he said, "Oh, you know what? I got to go to my boy house," and it
yeah,
was his apartment. She still
right.
got in the car. For what reason? Where did you think you were going?
It doesn't even matter.
See,
If she
I can't
says
vibe with that, bro. I
if
can't do
she
that.
says at any point that she no longer likes the situation and she's uncomfortable, you no longer, just because you're famous, you no longer can make her do anything.
No, and I agree with you on that. What a question specifically is, if this man had propositioned you and he
Yeah,
said, "I would like to take you back to my apartment for us to have a
right,
further discussion," and
right.
she said, "I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not cool," or even if she just said, "No, I'm good." What was it that transpired to get her in his vehicle to where she admittedly said she thought they were going to another person's apartment because he said, "I got to make a stop at one friend's apartment"? That's the question that I feel like people don't discuss. Why did you get in the car with a man who already told you, "I'm interested in we'll call it an extracurricular activity," and you still engaged in transporting yourself with
hmm
said person? Why?
Everyone should be more careful. I mean, I see your point, but
Okay, see,
still,
see, now you agreeing. Now you
even
saying everyone
no,
should be
no, no.
more.
Everyone should be careful. He should be careful. She should be careful. But the thing is, even if she got in the car knowing, even if he said, "Hey, let's go back to my crib because I'm trying to fuck," even if he said it that bluntly to her, and she was like, "Okay, I'll get in the car with you," and then she gets in the car and suddenly she feels uncomfortable, things change. Like, she still
Right.
has the right to say, "You know what? I don't feel like it. Oh, we're going to your friend house? Okay, but is your friend coming with you? Oh, your friend gonna be there with us? Oh,
Right,
let's turn into a gangbang. I thought it was just gonna be me and you. This is a
right.
different situation than what I attended when I got into the car.
Here's the flaw in what you just said. You said
Okay,
that she was cool with it when she thought it was just him, and now she's finding out it's more people, and she's like, "Nah, I'm not with it." And my question again, I can't let you skate away because this is the final topic, and we're gonna go at this in more detail on the next episode. But for right now, to close this out, my question for you is, as a man who
right.
is understanding and I feel like compassionate and empathetic towards people who are victims of sexual
Yeah,
abuse, sexual
yeah,
misconduct, and just
yeah,
discrimination and harassment across the board. You're
yeah.
not justifying it. I'm not justifying it. I'm not saying Russell Simmons or Tavis Smiley. I don't care if Bill Cosby, we could go all the way back to him.
Oh man.
He already acknowledged his sins. We could go back to R. Kelly, who already skated off and skeeted off on his sins. Like at the
Okay.
end of the day, where do we draw the line where we say, okay, you're an adult? And I talked to one of my best friends, one of my brothers, Levi, about this today, and I said, you know what, if you were a child and someone forced himself on you and you come out 40 years later, there should be no statute of limitations on that because you're a
Hmm.
pedophile, you molested a child, you sexually abused a child, you a scumbag, bury you under the jail. But when it
Yep.
comes to these individuals who are saying, I worked for Tavis Smiley or I was the assistant to Russell Simmons and he invited me to his crib, I said no, but then somehow you end up in his car and then y'all are going somewhere and he says, let me stop off at my friend's apartment. You're like, okay, cool. Well, how did that conversation occur? How did you get there? I feel like we need to have some accountability on the fact that we own where we are and we also own the decisions that we make. So if you're going to say, which a lot of the celebrity females have said, which is I didn't want to make any type of detrimental situation with my career. I didn't want to
Hmm.
cause any cost to my growth and my development, my trajectory as far as being famous. Like that to me is different from a child who has no choice as an adult. I honestly believe you have a choice. If somebody at your job, Mike, and I know that you're doing your individual thing, you're an entrepreneur and you grinding. But if you were still in that corporate plantation and somebody came to you of same sex, and let's say that's just not your thing, and they come and grab you by the ass and they just like, hey, what's good? And they your superior, I very highly doubt that you'd be like, you know what, man, this is a good job. I can't risk this. So I'm gonna let Leroy grab my ass because I need this
Oh
job,
man.
bro.
Nah, that's not
Exactly.
gonna happen.
That's my point, bro. I'm gonna leave it at that only because there's so much more to be said about it. But I still feel like at the end of the day, again, we have to have a better perspective of saying, you know what, we have two voices right now. We got somebody or a group of individuals saying that person X has made me uncomfortable, and we should not group that same said person with like a Harvey Weinstein who is known or what is it, Roy Moore out in
Yeah.
Alabama, who was known for messing with little girls and little children, banned from the mall, signing yearbooks. Like this motherfucker was crazy. Like he was
Yeah.
out of his goddamn mind. So
Yeah.
with all that being said, we have to separate the two. And I feel like with the whole Me Too movement, we just bringing everybody together. If you touch my butt, rub my knee, grab my shoulder, gave me a kiss, told me my titties look good, whatever it was, those type of people are different than the individuals who are taking children or are taking people of adolescence or a lack of better knowledge energy and taking them and taking advantage of them. And that's where I'll draw the line and say, you know what, we need to have a conversation about those folks first, and then we deal with the people who maybe use their power to coerce, because there's a difference. Coercion and straight up forceful rape are two different things. Do we agree on that?
Okay. Explain what you're saying by the two different ones, because
Bro, we running out of time, so I'm gonna say it like this: coercion, meaning if
hey,
my man's
hey,
Leroy
women have
grabbed your ass.
coerced me into doing some things
No,
before, and
no, Leroy coerced you. He grabbed your ass and said, "Hey, Mike, hey, I got a promotion for you, but that you thick. I like him. I like him
uh,
thick." So
why can't my boss be a girl so I can actually have a
because
real
no,
situation where I
because
actually have to think about this
because
shit?
the same way that you would look at disgust as that individual from grabbing your ass is the same disgust level that a woman may have about her boss. we can't always make it heterosexual because we live in a world where if you're disgusted by someone or if you don't feel sexually attracted to someone and they approach you in a sexual nature or they basically behave in a sexual nature towards you, it's still wrong. So I use that for the male perspective to say, put yourself in that position. It's the utmost disrespectful way that they could treat you at your place of business, but they telling you, you know what, Mike, I can get you at 75 grand a year. I can get you at 125, but I need to grab that ass daily. You not gonna say, you know what, the bread is good. I'll sacrifice my self-respect and my dignity. You're not gonna do that, bro, because you don't even work in that environment no more. That shows your character right there.
No, I wouldn't do it because it's a guy. But if I had like a boss
Here
as
we
a
go.
female and
Right.
she looked good,
See,
yo,
and
I
here
don't
go-
know. I
and
might
here
be
go-
feeling like I'm getting two benefits in one. I don't
and
know,
here go
man.
the sexism topic that we're gonna talk about in the future. Thinking out loud. It's your boy J Lip. You know what this is. You know who I am. TOLpodcast.com. The big homie Mike Billingsley in the building. Mike, one more time, let them know where they can reach you at.
Hey, come up to www.charliexwood.com. Come get a nice pair of frames. They real wood, and I guarantee that if you break them, lose them, or anything happens to them, I help you buy another pair, no problem.
Point Blank Period is confused as he is right now. He don't know what the hell was going on in this conversation. But I'm right, he wrong. Y'all listen to it. Let us know what y'all think. It's your boy J Lip. It's your boy Mike Billingsley, Charlie Wood, TOL Podcast Collabo, and
We out.
You gotta wait till I say and though. So
Ah,
I'm saying,
come on, bro.
and
We out.
we out.
This episode of TOL Podcast was executive produced by J Lip. Music provided by Daisy Smith. And for more episodes, we're on YouTube, SoundCloud, and now iTunes. Go to TOLpodcast.com for the latest. Thank you for listening.